They say the dead rest in peace. They say that once the earth covers the coffin, the story ends. But not here. Not on the savage moors of Yorkshire. This isn't a fairy tale. And God knows, it isn't a romance. It's a crime scene of the soul. A confession of a love so violent, it twisted into a curse. Imagine a man digging up a grave, not to steal, but to hold a corpse one last time. Imagine a woman 18 years dead, whose fingers still scratch at the window pane, begging to be let in from the cold. Some souls are too wild for heaven. Some hearts are too dark to beat alone. Welcome to the abyss. Welcome to Wuthering Heights. The story begins not with people, but with the land. In the desolate moors of Yorkshire, the earth is not kind, and the heavens are not forgiving. There stands a solitary house, built strong to withstand the eternal assault of the north wind. They call it Wuthering Heights. The name is descriptive of the atmospheric tumult to which its station is exposed in stormy weather. Pure, bracing ventilation they must have up there at all times. Indeed, one may guess the power of the north wind blowing over the edge, by the excessive slant of a few stunted firs at the end of the house, and by a range of gaunt thorns all stretching their limbs one way, as if craving arms of the sun. It was in the year 1771, on a dark and windy evening, that the seeds of tragedy were sown. The master of the house, Mr. Earnshaw, a stern but kind-hearted man, had prepared for a journey to Liverpool, a great distance to walk in those days. Before leaving, he asked his children what gifts they desired. Hindley, the eldest, a proud boy of 14, asked for a fiddle. Catherine, hardly 6 years old, but already mischievous and spirited, asked for a whip, for she was already riding the farm horses bareback. "You must sleep, children," the old master said, buttoning his greatcoat against the coming snow. "And when I return, I shall bring you the finest things." 3 days they waited. On the third night, a terrible storm rattled the leaded windows. The wind howled down the chimney like a banshee. Just as the children were losing hope, the door burst open. Mr. Earnshaw stumbled in, exhausted, soaked to the bone, and looking grave. He threw himself into his chair, too weary to speak. The children ran to him, searching his pockets for their promised gifts. "Silence," he cried, pushing them back gently. "I have returned, but I have brought a burden with me." He opened his heavy coat. There, huddled against his chest, was not a fiddle, nor a whip, but a child. It was a dirty, ragged, black-haired boy, big enough to walk, but seemingly mute. His skin was dark, as if he came from the devil's own lineage, or perhaps from the mysterious gypsy tribes. He stared at the family with eyes that were black jewels, devoid of fear but full of suspicion. He spoke a gibberish that no one could understand. Mrs. Earnshaw was ready to fling it out of doors. "Have you lost your senses, husband?" she shrieked. "To bring this gypsy brat into our home when we have our own mouths to feed?" "He was starving in the streets of Liverpool," Mr. Earnshaw replied solemnly. "Not a soul would claim him. I could not leave him to die like a dog in the gutter. He shall stay. He shall be raised as one of our own." They searched his pockets and found the fiddle crushed to splinters. The whip was lost. Hindley blubbered and wept, blaming the dark intruder for his loss. Catherine, disappointed, spat at the boy. That was his welcome to Wuthering Heights: hatred, tears, and spit. They gave him no surname. They named him Heathcliff. It was the name of a son who had died in childhood. It served him for both Christian and surname. From that first night, the house was divided. Heathcliff was an usurper. He was a cuckoo in the nest. Hindley, the rightful heir, looked upon him with a venomous hatred. He saw his father's affection shifting to this interloper. Mr. Earnshaw took to Heathcliff strangely. The boy became his favourite, perhaps because Heathcliff was as tough as the old man himself. Heathcliff was a strange child. He would stand Hindley's blows without winking or shedding a tear. When Hindley kicked him under the table, Heathcliff would simply stare back, breathless and calm, nursing a silent grudge that would one day grow into a monster. He was sullen, patient, and hard as the whinstone of the moors. But while Hindley hated him, a miracle occurred with Catherine. The girl who had spat at him soon became his shadow. They were two wild spirits, recognizing each other in the chaos. They became inseparable. They were more than friends, they were conspirators against the rigid order of the household. They would run away to the moors in the morning and remain there all day, mocking the reprimands of the servants. The punishment of the rod was nothing to them, so long as they could laugh together afterwards. One evening, as the wind battered the walls, they sat huddled by the fire, whispering. "Hindley calls me a devil," Heathcliff murmured, his eyes reflecting the dancing flames. "Let him," Catherine replied, fierce and loyal. "If you are a devil, then I shall be one too. We shall rule the moors, Heathcliff. Just you and I. No one else matters. Not father, not Hindley, not God." Little did they know, as they sat in the warmth of the hearth, that the old protector, Mr. Earnshaw, was growing weaker by the day. His strength was failing, and with his death, the only shield protecting Heathcliff from the tyranny of Hindley would be shattered. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm that was about to break inside Wuthering Heights. In the course of time, Mr. Earnshaw began to fail. He sat by the fire, his strength waning, his mind often wandering to the dark boy he had saved. The old lion was dying, and the jackals were waiting. It was a stormy October evening when the end came. He was sitting in his chair, the wind singing a dirge around the house, when his head fell forward on his chest. He passed quietly, leaving Heathcliff without a protector in a house that despised him. Hindley returned for the funeral, but he did not come alone. He brought with him a wife, a flighty, thin woman named Frances, who feared death and coughed with a sound that foretold her own early grave. With the old master gone, Hindley became the tyrant of Wuthering Heights. His first act of power was to degrade Heathcliff. "He is no brother of mine," Hindley declared, his eyes burning with years of suppressed jealousy. "He shall not sit at our table. He shall not learn with the curate. Let him work outdoors. Let him earn his bread like the other servants, or let him starve." And so, Heathcliff, who had once been treated as a son, was banished to the stables. He was stripped of his education, clothed in rough rags, and forced to labor in the fields from dawn till dusk. His hands grew hard, his manners grew rough, and the light of intelligence in his eyes was slowly clouded by a brooding sullenness. Yet, Hindley's cruelty failed in its primary purpose. It did not separate the two wild souls. In fact, it welded them together. Catherine remained loyal. She mocked her brother's authority. When Heathcliff was beaten, she wept with him. When he was sent to the fields, she ran after him. The moors became their kingdom, a paradise far removed from the hell of the house. They grew up like two savages, unruly, proud, and utterly free. They cared for no one but each other. "I am going to bear it, Cathy," Heathcliff would say, wiping the dirt from his face after a hard day's labor. "I shall be as hard as the rock. He cannot hurt me while you are with me." But destiny has a cruel way of intervening. One Sunday evening, on a scamper across the moors, their curiosity led them to the edge of the valley, to the park of Thrushcross Grange. It was the home of the Lintons, a family of gentility, wealth, and softness. It was a world alien to the rough existence of the Heights. Catherine and Heathcliff crept through the garden and peered through the lighted window. What they saw was a scene of breathtaking luxury, crimson carpets, shimmering chandeliers, and soft velvet furniture. Inside, the Linton children, Edgar and Isabella, were crying. They were fighting over a small dog, sobbing with a pettiness that disgusted Heathcliff. "Look at them, Cathy!" Heathcliff whispered, pressing his face to the glass. "They are pining for things we would not deign to touch. I'd not exchange, for 1,000 lives, my condition here, for Edgar Linton's at Thrushcross Grange, not if I might have the privilege of flinging Joseph off the highest gable, and painting the house front with Hindley's blood." But they were discovered. The bulldog, Skulker, was unleashed. He chased them, his jaws snapping. Heathcliff tried to protect Catherine, but the beast was too fast. He seized her ankle, and her scream pierced the night. The servants of the Grange rushed out. They found the wild girl of Wuthering Heights bleeding, and the dark boy cursing and fighting to free her. When the Lintons realized who she was, Miss Catherine Earnshaw, they were horrified. They carried her into the house, laying her on a sofa, fussing over her injury. But for Heathcliff, there was no such welcome. "A wicked boy," old Mr. Linton cried, looking at Heathcliff's dark face and ragged clothes with disgust. "He is a villain, a night walker. He looks like the son of the fortune-teller that stole my tame pheasant. Put him out." Edgar Linton, a pale, fair-haired boy with blue eyes, stared at Heathcliff from the safety of the window. He sneered at the savage intruder. Heathcliff stood alone in the garden, watching through the glass. He saw them combing Catherine's wild hair, feeding her cakes, treating her like a princess. He saw Catherine smile, not at him, but at the comfort surrounding her. For the first time, a wall of glass stood between them. It was not just a window, it was a barrier of class, of wealth, and of expectation. Catherine was trapped in the golden cage of the Grange, and Heathcliff was cast back into the darkness of the Heights, alone. He walked back to Wuthering Heights that night, his heart burning with a new kind of hatred. He did not know it yet, but the girl who entered that house a savage would return a lady. And that transformation would be the doom of them both. 5 weeks passed, 5 weeks of silence in the Heights, while Catherine remained a guest at Thrushcross Grange. When the time finally came for her return, it was Christmas Eve. The house was decked in holly, and a great fire roared in the hearth, but the true heat was yet to come. When the carriage arrived, Heathcliff watched from the shadows. He expected his wild playmate to jump out, ready to run to the moors. Instead, a young lady descended. She was no longer the savage girl in breeches. She wore a splendid dress of brown silk, her hair, once a tangled manet, was now arranged in perfect ringlets beneath a feathered beaver hat. She moved with a careful grace, mindful of her fine clothes. Hindley and his wife welcomed her with delight. "Why, Cathy, you look like a queen!" Hindley exclaimed. Heathcliff hung back, obscured by the gloom of the corner. He was acutely aware of his own state, his clothes were caked with the mire of the stables, his hair was unkempt, and his hands were rough with labor. Catherine looked around. "Where is Heathcliff?" she asked, her voice polished, lacking its old Yorkshire burr. When he finally stepped forward, the contrast was cruel. He looked like a servant, she looked like a mistress. Catherine ran to him and kissed him, but as she pulled back, she saw the dirt on his skin and the sullen darkness of his expression. A nervous, thoughtless laugh escaped her lips. "Why, how very black and cross you look," she exclaimed, touching his dusty coat with her clean, white fingers. "And how funny and grim. But that is because I am used to Edgar and Isabella, who are always so clean and merry." The comparison was a dagger. Heathcliff recoiled as if burned. "I shall not stand to be laughed at," he growled, his pride stung to the quick. "I shall not bear it." He turned and fled from the room, vanishing into the dark kitchen. Catherine was left bewildered, her joy dampened. She had not meant to be cruel, but the Grange had changed her vision. She now saw the world, and Heathcliff, through the eyes of the Lintons. The next morning, the house prepared for the Christmas feast. The Lintons were invited. Heathcliff, brooding in the stables, felt the crushing weight of his degradation. He approached Nellie Dean, the housekeeper, with a rare moment of vulnerability. "Nellie, make me decent," he asked quietly. "I'm going to be good." Nellie washed him and dressed him in his best clothes, trying to cheer him up. "You are younger than Edgar," she told him, "and if you were a prince in disguise, as I suspect you are, you would not envy him his fair hair or his money." For a moment, hope flickered in Heathcliff's eyes. He entered the main hall, trying to hold his head high. But Hindley was there, guarding the gate of respectability. "Send him away," Hindley shouted upon seeing the boy. "He shall not sit with the gentry. Look at him, he looks like a colt's manner in his eyes." Edgar Linton, sitting comfortably by Catherine, made the mistake of his life. He leaned over and whispered a mockery about Heathcliff's long hair. The dam broke. Heathcliff's desire to be good vanished in a flash of red rage. He seized a tureen of hot applesauce from the table and dashed it full into Edgar's face. Pandemonium erupted. Edgar screamed, wiping the scalding sauce from his eyes. Hindley seized Heathcliff, dragged him to the back kitchen, and flogged him mercilessly before locking him in the garret until morning. The Christmas feast went on, but the joy was hollow. Catherine sat at the table, chewing little and smiling less. Her heart was upstairs in the cold garret. Later that night, she crept up to the door. Heathcliff was there, bruised and silent. He had not eaten since yesterday. "Heathcliff, come down," she whispered. "I've saved you some cake." "I don't want it," came the voice from the darkness. "I want nothing to eat." Nellie later found him brooding, his eyes fixed on the floor with a terrifying intensity. "You will make yourself ill," Nellie scolded. "You must forgive and forget, Heathcliff. God punishes the wicked." Heathcliff looked up, and his face was a mask of cold, calculated hate. The boy was gone, the avenger was born. "God punishes the wicked," he repeated softly. "No, Nellie. I am trying to settle how I shall pay Hindley back. I don't care how long I wait, if I can only do it at last. I hope he will not die before I do." "For shame, Heathcliff," cried Nellie. "It is for God to punish, not you." "But it gives me a sensation of pain to be good," he replied, staring into the fire. "And I have not the patience for God." The rift had opened. Catherine was being pulled toward the light of the Lintons, and Heathcliff was sinking deeper into the dark earth. He began to perceive that to keep Catherine, he needed power. And to get power, he would need to destroy everything that stood in his way. Time moved on, heavy and dark. Hindley's wife, Frances, died of consumption, and with her death, the last restraints on Hindley's soul snapped. He gave himself over to drink and despair, turning the house into a den of gambling and violence. The curate fled, the servants left, all save for the cantankerous Joseph and the loyal Nellie. And amidst this chaos, Catherine and Heathcliff grew taller, wilder, and more entangled. But the lure of the Grange was strong. Edgar Linton, now a young man, was deeply in love with Catherine. He was the opposite of the Heights, gentle, rich, and safe. One sultry afternoon, while Hindley was in a drunken stupor and Heathcliff was out working in the fields, Edgar visited. He asked Catherine to marry him. She accepted. But that evening, a storm began to brew, both in the sky and in the kitchen of Wuthering Heights. Catherine sought out Nellie Dean. She was restless, her mood shifting like the wind. "Nellie, make me tell you," she said, sitting on the hearth. "Edgar Linton has asked me to marry him, and I've given him an answer. I accepted him." Nellie stopped her work. "And do you love Mr. Edgar?" "Of course," Catherine replied. "I love the ground under his feet, and the air over his head, and everything he touches." "Why?" Nellie pressed. "Because he is handsome, and pleasant to be with, and because he is young and cheerful, and because he will be rich, and I shall be the greatest woman of the neighborhood." "And what of Heathcliff?" The name hung in the air like a thunderclap. Catherine's face fell. She looked into the fire, her expression tormented. She did not know that on the other side of the high-backed settle, hidden in the deepest shadow, Heathcliff lay resting. He had just come in, unseen. "Nellie, I am unhappy," Catherine whispered. "It is my soul that's different. I've no more business to marry Edgar Linton than I have to be in heaven. But it would degrade me to marry Heathcliff now, so he shall never know how I love him." In the shadows, a bench creaked. The listener had heard enough. He had heard the word degrade. He did not stay to hear the rest. Heathcliff rose silently and stole out of the kitchen, vanishing into the gathering storm. Catherine continued, unaware that she had just severed her own lifeline. "He shall never know how I love him," she went on, her eyes shining with a fierce light. "And that, not because he's handsome, Nellie, but because he's more myself than I am. Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same, and Linton's is as different as a moonbeam from lightning, or frost from fire." She paused, then delivered the words that would echo through the ages. "My love for Linton is like the foliage in the woods. Time will change it, I'm well aware, as winter changes the trees. My love for Heathcliff resembles the eternal rocks beneath, a source of little visible delight, but necessary. Nellie, I am Heathcliff. He's always, always in my mind, not as a pleasure, any more than I am always a pleasure to myself, but as my own being." Suddenly, Joseph entered, grumbling about the rain. "The lad's gone," he croaked. "Heathcliff's run off." Catherine sprang up. "Heathcliff," she cried. "Was he here?" He was lying on the settle." A cold terror seized her. She realized he might have heard. She ran to the door and flung it open. The night was pitch black, the rain falling in torrents, the wind roaring down the valley. "Heathcliff! Heathcliff!" she screamed into the void. There was no answer. Only the sound of thunder rolling over the moors. She stood there in the soaking rain, hair plastered to her face, calling his name until her voice broke. She waited for hours, refusing to come inside, her dress soaked, her skin freezing. "He heard me," she moaned to Nellie when she was finally dragged back in, shivering uncontrollably. "He heard me say it would degrade me, and he left before he heard the rest. Oh, God, Nellie, I've killed him." That night, Catherine fell into a dangerous fever. The doctor was called, and for weeks she hovered between life and death. The Lintons took her to Thrushcross Grange to nurse her back to health. But the girl who recovered was not the same. A part of her had vanished into the night with Heathcliff. 3 years went by. Heathcliff did not return. No one knew if he was alive or dead. Catherine, believing him lost forever, married Edgar Linton. She became the mistress of the Grange, burying her wild heart under silks and velvet. She thought the storm was over. She thought she had found peace. But the moors do not forget, and the wind was about to change direction. 3 years had passed since the night the kitchen door slammed shut on Heathcliff. In that time, the seasons turned with their usual indifference. Catherine Earnshaw became Catherine Linton. She lived in the golden cage of Thrushcross Grange, indulged by her husband, Edgar, and his sister, Isabella. To the outside observer, she was happy. But those who knew her best, like Nellie Dean, saw that her happiness was like a calm sea hiding jagged rocks. She was peaceful only because she was not opposed. Gunpowder is as harmless as dust until the spark is applied. The spark arrived on a mellow September evening. Nellie was in the courtyard, bringing in a basket of apples, when a shadow fell across the gate. A man stood there, leaning against the post. He was tall, dark, and wore a coat that spoke of travel and money. His face was obscured by the twilight, but his eyes glinted with a familiar, unsettling fire. "Nellie," the voice said, deep, resonant, yet echoing a memory from the past. "Is that you?" Nellie dropped her basket. "Heathcliff," she whispered, disbelief coloring her tone. "Is it really you?" It was, and yet it was not. The ragged ploughboy was gone. In his place stood a man of athletic build and military bearing. His countenance was much older in expression and decision of character, though he was barely 20. He looked like a gentleman, yet the savagery remained in his eyes, half civilized and wholly dangerous. He had returned, pockets full of mysterious wealth, and a soul darker than the deepest mine. "Go and tell her I am here," he commanded. When Catherine heard the news, she did not speak, she flew. She burst into the parlor where Edgar was reading, her face flushed with a terrifying vitality. "Edgar, Edgar," she gasped, seizing his hands. "Heathcliff is come. He is here." Edgar Linton turned pale. He remembered the stable boy who had thrown hot applesauce in his face. "Well," he said with cold restraint, "you bid him step up." But Catherine was already at the door. She dragged Heathcliff into the light of the parlor. The reunion was a spectacle of raw emotion. Catherine seized his hands, laughing and crying, heedless of her husband's presence. She stared at him as if he were a ghost returned to life. "Cruel Heathcliff," she cried. "You have fought a bitter fight since I left you. But you have come back. And you are improved, you are a man now." Heathcliff looked at her, devouring her face with his eyes. "I found that I had to fight," he said, his voice smooth but edged with steel. "I struggled only for you, Cathy. I have returned for you." Edgar stood by the fireplace, trembling with a mix of fear and disdain. He tried to maintain his dignity. "You are welcome, sir," Edgar said stiffly, "so long as you do not disturb the peace of my household." Heathcliff bowed slightly, a gesture of mocking politeness. "I shall not disturb it," he replied. "I seek only a glimpse of what I have lost." But disturbing the peace was exactly his intent. He did not stay at the Grange. Instead, he dropped a bombshell. He had taken up residence at Wuthering Heights. "At the Heights?" Nellie asked later, horrified. "With Hindley?" Heathcliff smirked. "I am lodging there. Hindley invited me. It was a devil's bargain." Hindley, now a ruined drunkard desperate for money, had welcomed his old enemy back because Heathcliff had gold. Night after night, Heathcliff sat across from his childhood tormentor, coolly stripping Hindley of his fortune, his land, and his dignity, card by card, bottle by bottle. He was executing a slow, meticulous murder of the soul. Back at the Grange, the atmosphere grew heavy. Heathcliff began to visit regularly. Catherine was delirious with joy, reviving into a creature of energy and fire, alienating the gentle Edgar. But a new complication arose, one that Heathcliff had not foreseen but was quick to exploit. Isabella Linton, Edgar's younger sister, a delicate flower who had never known hardship, began to watch the dark visitor with fascinated eyes. She saw him not as he was a pitiless avenger, but as a romantic hero from a novel. She saw his brooding silence as depth, his cruelty as passion. She fell in love with the wolf. Catherine, knowing the true nature of the beast, tried to warn her. Heathcliff is an unreclaimed creature, without refinement, without cultivation, Catherine told Isabella, her voice sharp. He is a fierce, pitiless, wolfish man. He'd crush you like a sparrow's egg, Isabella. Do not imagine that he conceals depths of benevolence beneath a stern exterior. He is not a rough diamond, he is a trap. Isabella would not listen. You are jealous, she accused Catherine. You wish to keep him all to yourself. When Heathcliff learned of this infatuation, he stared at Isabella with a look of incredulous contempt. She loves me, he sneered to Catherine. I looked at her face just now, and I should like to have the pleasure of hanging her dog to show her how much I respect her sentiments. Yet, a cruel plan began to form in his mind. If he could not have Catherine, he could marry Isabella. By doing so, he would inherit the Linton fortune if Edgar died without a male heir. More importantly, he would inflict the ultimate torture upon Edgar and Catherine. He would own their blood. He would make the Linton name his own. The storm had returned, and this time, it would spare no one. The tension at Thrushcross Grange snapped on a dull afternoon in January. Heathcliff had come to visit, and his presence filled the room with a suffocating dread. Isabella, pale and trembling with her misguided love, watched him. Catherine, cruel in her frustration, taunted her sister-in-law, while Heathcliff looked on with a sneer that would have frozen the blood of a lesser woman. Suddenly, the door opened. Edgar Linton entered. He had been patient, too patient, but his patience had run dry. He saw the man who was destroying his peace, sitting at his hearth. Your presence is a moral poison, Edgar declared, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. I have treated you with patience, but I shall not suffer you to prowl here any longer. You must leave, sir, and never return. Heathcliff stood up, towering over the slight figure of Edgar. He leaned against the mantelpiece, looking down at him with lazy scorn. Cathy, he drawled, this lamb of yours threatens like a bull. It is in danger of splitting its skull against my knuckles. Catherine, furious that her two worlds were colliding, turned on her husband. Have you lost your reason, Edgar? She cried. If you strike him, I shall never forgive you. But Edgar, pushed beyond endurance, signalled for his servants. Heathcliff, seeing he was outnumbered but not outmatched, grabbed a poker from the fire. But before violence could erupt, Edgar struck Heathcliff a blow to the throat and fled to call for help. Heathcliff, recovering quickly, looked at the door with a savage grin. I shall not stay to be mobbed by footmen, he spat. He smashed the lock of the door, looked once at Catherine, a look of mingled love and fury, and vanished through the window into the garden. When Edgar returned with his men, the intruder was gone. He turned to Catherine, his face white with determination. The time for compromise was over. Will you give up Heathcliff hereafter, or will you give up me? Edgar demanded. It is impossible for you to be my friend and his at the same time, and I absolutely require to know which you choose. Catherine stared at him. She felt the walls of the Grange closing in on her like a coffin. She could not choose. To choose Edgar was to deny her soul, to choose Heathcliff was to embrace ruin. I require to be let alone, she screamed. I demand it. Don't you see I can scarcely stand? I'll make an end of it. I'll try to break both your hearts by breaking my own. She fled to her room and locked the door. For 3 days and 3 nights, she refused to eat. She refused to speak. She lay on her bed, tearing at the pillows with her teeth, scattering the feathers like snow around the room. Her mind, unable to reconcile the separation, began to fracture. Nellie Dean found her on the third day. Catherine was sitting up, her hair loose, her eyes staring wildly at her own reflection in the mirror, not recognizing herself. "Don't you see that face?" she whispered to Nellie, pointing at the glass. "There is a ghost in the room." "It is yourself, Mrs. Linton," Nellie said, terrified. Catherine ignored her. She dragged herself to the window and threw it open, though it was the dead of winter. The cold wind from the moors rushed in, and she inhaled it as if it were life itself. "Look," she cried, pointing into the dark void. "There is Wuthering Heights. I can see the lights. And there is my room, and Heathcliff is there, waiting for me. Oh, if I were but in my own bed in the old house. And that wind sounding in the firs by the lattice. Do let me feel it, it comes straight down the moor, do let me have one breath." She was raving. She wished to be a girl again, half savage and hardy, and free. "Why am I so changed?" she sobbed. "Why does my blood rush into a hell of tumult at a few words? I won't rest till I am with you, Heathcliff. I'll not lie there by myself. They may bury me 12 feet deep and throw the church down over me, but I won't rest till you are with me. I never will." While Catherine lay burning with brain fever, tossing in a delirium of memories, a second tragedy was unfolding in the shadows. Heathcliff had not been idle. Rejected by the house, and knowing Catherine was beyond his reach for the moment, he executed his plan for Isabella. He did not love her, he despised her. But she was an instrument of revenge. On a dark night, while the household was distracted by Catherine's illness, Isabella Linton ran away. She vanished into the mist, leaving behind her home, her brother, and her dignity. She thought she was running into the arms of a romantic hero. She did not see the omen that marked her departure. The next morning, a servant found Isabella's little dog, Fanny, hanging by a handkerchief from a bridle hook on the garden wall. It was not dead, but it was suffering. It was Heathcliff's wedding gift, a symbol of the cruelty that awaited his new bride. Edgar Linton received the news of his sister's elopement with a resignation that looked like apathy. He sat by Catherine's bedside, watching the woman he loved wither away, while his sister rode off into a living hell. "She has gone of her own accord," Edgar said quietly. "She has disowned me. She is only my sister in name, not because I disown her, but because she has disowned me." The storm had broken the house apart. Catherine was dying, Isabella was lost, and Heathcliff was the master of the game. 6 weeks after Isabella's flight, a letter arrived at Thrushcross Grange. It was addressed to Nellie Dean, for Edgar Linton would hold no communication with the sister who had betrayed him. The letter was not written in the hand of a happy bride, it was the scrawl of a prisoner. "Nellie," it read, "I am at Wuthering Heights. I was a fool. I imagined I was marrying a hero, I have married a monster. Is Mr. Heathcliff a man? If so, is he mad? And if not, is he a devil? I beseech you, come to me. I have no friend in the world." Nellie, filled with foreboding, made her way up to the heights. The house stood grim and black against the grey sky. When she entered, the scene that greeted her was one of utter desolation. Isabella was there, but she was unrecognizable. The elegant girl who had once worn the finest silks was now a slattern. Her hair was uncurled and matted, her dress was soiled, and her face was gaunt with misery. She sat in the corner, eyeing the door with the terrified look of a trapped animal. Heathcliff sat opposite her, looking more vibrant and powerful than ever. He leaned on the table, his eyes fixed on his wife with a look of calm, murderous amusum *NT. "She has been telling you, I suppose, that I am a devil." Heathcliff sneered, looking at Nelly. She is tired of her plaything. She expected a knight in shining armor. She found me. I have not hidden my nature from her. I have shown her exactly who I am. And do you know, Nelly? She detests me, yet she cannot leave me. Isabella burst into tears. He is a fiend, she sobbed. He treats me worse than a servant. He has made me hate the world and hate myself. He uses me only to hurt Edgar. Silence. Heathcliff barked, and Isabella flinched as if struck. He turned to Nelly, his expression shifting from cruelty to a desperate, burning intensity. He did not care about Isabella. He did not care about his victory over the Lintons. He cared only for one thing. I want to know about Catherine, he demanded. Is she better? She is very ill, Nelly replied gravely. She is altered beyond recognition. The doctor says we must keep her calm. A shock could kill her. Heathcliff's face went white. He gripped the back of the chair until his knuckles cracked. I must see her, he said, his voice low and trembling. You cannot, Nelly insisted. Edgar never leaves her side. And if you go there, you will kill her. I must see her. Heathcliff roared, slamming his fist on the table. Do you think I care for Edgar Linton's anger? I would crush him like an insect. I have waited, Nelly. I have walked around the garden of the Grange every night, watching the lights in her window, listening for a sound of her voice. I have fought against the urge to break down the door and carry her off. But I can wait no longer. He pulled a letter from his pocket. You will give this to her, he commanded. You will put it in her hand when Linton is absent. If you refuse, I shall keep you here a prisoner at the Heights. I shall go down to the Grange myself, and I shall fight my way to her bedside, even if I have to kill everyone in that accursed house to do it. Nelly looked at him. He was not bluffing. He was a man possessed, driven by a hunger that transcended reason. She is dying, Heathcliff, Nelly whispered. Why torture her now? Because I cannot live without her, he cried. I have no existence outside of her. Do you understand? If she dies, I die. I must speak to her. I must hear her say she forgives me. Nelly, fearing his violence more than the consequences, took the letter. She left that house of hate, leaving Isabella to her misery. When she returned to the Grange, the contrast was heartbreaking. Catherine sat by the open window, propped up by pillows. She was dressed in loose white, her long hair streaming over her shoulders. She was beautiful, but it was the beauty of a phantom. Her eyes were fixed on the distant hills of Wuthering Heights, yearning for the earth that would soon claim her. Edgar had gone to church, for it was a Sunday morning. The house was quiet. The bells of Gimmerton Chapel were ringing in the valley, a sweet, mournful sound. Nelly approached the invalid. I have something for you, she said softly. Catherine turned her head slowly. When she saw the handwriting on the letter, a tremor went through her wasted frame. She did not need to read it. She knew. He is here, she breathed. He is in the garden, Nelly admitted. Catherine struggled to sit up, her eyes blazing with a sudden, terrifying energy. Open the window, she gasped. Let him in. Let him come to me, before I forget who I am. The stage was set for the final act. The two souls, separated by pride, by marriage, and by fate, were about to collide one last time. It would not be a gentle reunion, it would be a shattering of the earth. Heathcliff strode into the room, not with the reverence of a visitor, but with the desperation of a madman. When Catherine saw him, she did not speak, she sprang up with a sudden, terrifying burst of strength and threw herself into his arms. He caught her, and they held each other in an embrace that seemed less like a reunion of lovers and more like a collision of planets. "Oh, Cathy! Oh, my life! How can I bear it?" Heathcliff groaned, his voice thick with anguish. He kissed her hands, her face, her wasted arms, while tears from a man who never wept, fell upon her. But Catherine, even at death's door, was fierce. She pulled back to look at him, her eyes flashing with a mixture of love and accusation. "You and Edgar have broken my heart, Heathcliff. And you both come to bewail the deed to me. Will you forget me? Will you be happy when I am in the earth?" Heathcliff's face contorted. He did not offer comfort, he offered truth, sharp as a knife. "Don't torture me till I'm as mad as yourself," he cried. "You know that I could as soon forget you as my existence. Why did you despise me? Why did you betray your own heart, Cathy? I have not broken your heart, you have broken it, and in breaking it, you have broken mine. The worst of it is that I am strong. Do I want to live? What kind of living will it be when you, oh, God? Would you like to live with your soul in the grave?" "I forgive you," she whispered, her strength failing. "Forgive me." "It is hard to forgive, and to look at those eyes, and feel those wasted hands," he answered. "Kiss me again, and don't let me see your eyes. I forgive what you have done to me. I love my murderer, but yours. How can I?" That night, Catherine Earnshaw died quietly. She gave birth to a daughter, also named Catherine, and then she slipped away. When Nellie told Heathcliff the news in the garden, he did not weep. He dashed his head against the knotted trunk of the ash tree until it bled, and howled like a wild beast speared in the heart. "May she wake in torment," he shrieked, looking up at the grey sky. "Catherine Earnshaw, may you not rest as long as I am living. You said I killed you, haunt me, then. I know that ghosts have wandered on earth. Be with me always, take any form, drive me mad. Only do not leave me in this abyss, where I cannot find you. Oh, God! It is unutterable. I cannot live without my life. I cannot live without my soul." 18 years passed. Heathcliff became a bitter, miserly tyrant, owning both the Heights and the Grange. He destroyed Hindley's son, Hareton, and forced Catherine's daughter into a miserable marriage with his own dying son. He had his revenge. But he had no peace. One night, he confessed a terrible secret to Nellie. "I disturbed her," he whispered, his eyes gleaming with a necrophilic madness. "On the day she was buried, I bribed the sexton. I struck one side of her coffin loose. And I bribed him to do the same to mine when I am dead. By the time the earth settles, our dust will mingle. Edgar Linton will not be able to distinguish us." As the end of his life approached, a strange change came over him. He stopped eating. He stopped sleeping. He spent his nights walking the moors, returning at dawn, pale and trembling, yet with a wild, ecstatic joy in his eyes. "Is she here?" Nellie asked, terrified. "She is within sight," he whispered, staring into the empty air. "I am within sight of my heaven. I have but one more step to take." One stormy night in April, the rain lashed against the stone walls. The next morning, Nellie noticed the master's window was swinging open, flapping in the rain. She entered the room. The bed was soaked. And there, lying on his back, lay Heathcliff. His eyes were wide open, staring out of the window at the stormy moors. His face wore a grin, a sneering, fierce, yet exultant smile. His hair was wet, his hand rested on the sill, as if he had been reaching for someone outside. The master of Wuthering Heights was dead. He had died as he had lived, alone, defiant, and longing for his other half. He was buried as he wished, next to Catherine. The country folk say he does not rest. A shepherd boy claims to have seen Heathcliff and a woman wandering the moors on rainy nights. They say no grass grows on his grave. But the story ends with Mr. Lockwood visiting the kirkyard one last time. He stood before the 3 headstones, the grey stone of Catherine in the centre, Edgar's on one side, and Heathcliff's on the other. I lingered round them, he thought, under that benign sky, watched the moths fluttering among the heath and harebells, listened to the soft wind breathing through the grass, and wondered how anyone could ever imagine unquiet slumbers for the sleepers in that quiet earth.